Hey everyone! As you know, Kendrick here likes to run. So when a 100-mile race in Idaho lined up with our schedule, I saw this as the perfect opportunity to let him out of the driver's seat to run around a little bit. But first, no episode would be complete without talking about some kind of amazing food.
As we crossed over the border back into the United States, we stopped in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, where we had been invited to try the best sandwich shack.
Hey, we are here with Kip and Amber, a couple of our fellow new campers. They have a really awesome little tag.
Kip and Amber gave us an inside look at how the best sandwiches in Idaho are made.
So let's go check it out.
The Best Sandwich Shack specializes in Philly cheesesteak style sandwiches. With an extensive menu, it's pretty hard to decide what to eat, but we somehow managed.
After we finally made our choices, Kip let me into the kitchen for a behind-the-scenes look at our sandwiches being made. This is a 100% family-owned operation, so I really enjoyed watching Kip and his parents make the sandwiches as a team.
Dad?
Hi, Dad. There's Mom. Mom's over there.
Hi, Mom and Dad.
Mom and Dad make food.
Mom and Dad make the best food, don't they?
You know, I make the best food.
Oh my goodness.
Now, I'm no expert, but all I need to taste is this one sandwich in Idaho to tell you that it is the best sandwich in all of Idaho. It was pretty amazing.
Amazing. So with our bellies full, it was finally time to go run off those sandwiches with a 100-mile race.
One of the things I love about the ultra running community is how welcoming they are and how eager they are to help one another. When I reached out for a place for us to do laundry, we were actually welcomed into the home of two locals, Tom and Jenny, who gave us a place to stay for the duration of the race.
This was super convenient because I had no idea how much prep goes into preparing for a 100-mile race. Between the clothing, the gear, and the food, we made a mess.
There's a lot of things that go into planning for a 100-mile run in the mountains. One of the first things is nutrition. Most races have aid stations that are stocked with food and drinks about every 10 miles or so. But sometimes I have my own personal preferences that I like to have available out on the course.
I only do these things so I can eat whatever I want.
It's true. Check out what he's packing. He has every high-calorie food you can get. He's got those Ensure Pluses and all kinds of gels and
Equally important is your clothing and gear. 100 miles in the mountains can expose you to a lot of different conditions. So it's necessary to have clothing for conditions from warm and sunny to cold and snowy and everything in between. And on top of all the gear and all the food, there was one last thing to prepare. My crew, Mandy.
I had no idea how much was going to go into crewing a 100-mile race. But Kendrick's thorough preparation at every crew stop made my job 1,000 times easier.
So after packing all of my gear and scouting all of the crew stops with Mandy, there was only one thing left to do. Try to run 100 miles.
it's 3:32 a.m.
Been awake since a little after 3. Already have my oatmeal, granola, chia seed breakfast of champions, and coffee.
Are you ready for the day?
I don't think I'm ever really ready for the day.
To be honest, going into the race, my confidence was pretty low. I just came off a back injury, and before the back injury, I was even pretty undertrained. You never know what'll happen until you try, so I decided to go ahead and try and see what happened.
Walking up to the starting line. You ready to go?
Ready as I'll ever be.
It's cold out, huh?
As I stood by a fire to stay warm at the starting line, the only thing that was certain was the uncertainty.
You ready to do this?
Sure.
The start of a race is always kind of exciting.
2, 1, have some fun.
There's a lot of enthusiasm from both the runners and the crowd with tons of cowbells, and it's probably the most energetic time of the race aside from the finish.
Go Kendrick! Woo! All right, and Kendrick is off and running. It's a cold morning, but he was looking really good at the starting line. So Kendrick's got 17 miles till our first crew stop, but it's kind of a slow drive for me. So I'm going to go ahead and start heading over there so I can be there when he gets there. Let's go.
The first few hours of the race were pretty amazing. We're running in the dark by headlamp, which I always love doing. The sun's rising, you start to see that change and feel the change of the sun coming up and daylight starting to settle in.
About 11 miles into the day. Looks like it's gonna be a pretty day. Still feeling decent, but still pretty early.
We did a little out and back to a lake at the base of some mountains with just an amazing still reflection, kind of a blissful few hours at the beginning of the day.
At the first crew stop, all the runners were still bunched pretty close together, so I got to watch the first place runner come through and every racer in between them and Kendrick. You end up waiting for an unknown amount of time, and then as soon as your runner comes into the aid station, it's instant action, figuring out how you can help them and what they need, and being basically as quick as possible.
I'm making.
I was feeling okay. Feeling like I'd ran probably more than 17 miles, but still feeling better than I thought I would.
Kendrick looked really good at the first aid station, so it wasn't a long stop. I think he ate a snack and then basically took off and kept running.
Love you.
Been going for about 20 miles. Just left an aid station, starting the first big climb of the day. So, see how this goes.
I settled into a comfortable power hiking pace, and before I knew it, I was at the top.
I think I'm at the top of the first big climb. 27 miles in and definitely starting to feel it. Hey, slow and steady.
Of course, after the first big climb of the day came the first big descent. I knew my downhill legs were not really in that good a shape.
The interest of self-preservation, my lack of training and all that, I'm deciding to walk down and hopefully save my legs for later.
About 33 miles into the day, I got to see Mandy for the second time.
I thought I was going to have a little more downtime between aid stations. It ends up being that by the time you drive somewhere and you want to get there early enough that you don't miss your runner, then you end up just waiting for kind of an unknown amount of time.
As I came into the aid station, I was really happy to see Mandy at the outskirts cheering me on as I came in.
Yay! Welcome. Keep going, I got a chair down here.
To this point, I still really didn't have any mental lows. My body was starting to feel like I had been out for 30 miles.
He was pretty happy and he ate food, which is always a good thing. And then I sent him on his way.
Heading out. See you in another 15 miles. You got this, babe. Love you.
So I just saw Kendrick at mile 33, and he looked a little bit rougher than the first stop. He says his knee is hurting him. Back's doing okay, but his knee's hurting and he just didn't seem super cheerful. So Kendrick's favorite race food is Domino's pizza. Unfortunately, there's not a Domino's within an hour of this place. So I chose the local pizza joint, and I grabbed him the meatiest pizza I could find anyway.
The next stretch of trail brought in the worst conditions of the day, with a rainstorm rolling in that got me soaked to the bone.
About 40 miles in, and it started raining pretty decent. Time to put some rain gear on. I am 44 miles into the day, a little over 12 hours, moving pretty slow, but moving.
Eventually the rain relented, I warmed back up, and I was able to get to mile 49 where I saw Mandy again.
Bring it on in. You got this.
You got it.
You got
My
this.
legs to work at all.
At mile 49, I still didn't have a mental low point yet, but my body was definitely starting to hurt, and pretty bad.
I could tell he was in pain, and he doesn't usually say it, but you can just see it. At this point, our host, Jenny, was with us, who's also a physical therapist, and she offered to stretch Kendrick out a bit before he had to take off again.
Both hip flexors were hurting pretty bad, and my left one was hurting bad enough that I could only raise my leg about 6 to 12 inches.
Didn't know I was getting the VIP treatment. I hurt.
I set up a chair by the campfire because he was soaking wet, so he was able to dry off his feet, change his socks and shoes, get some food.
All right, it's not Domino's, but will it do?
I'll do.
I didn't know if he was going to keep going from that checkpoint.
My body was hurting pretty bad at this point, but I was still mentally okay. And I knew that I was going to go back out there. I just didn't know what I was capable of doing.
But he said he wanted to keep going, and I'm here to push him. So I sent him on his way across a river and into the dark.
Getting ready to go into the night.
All right.
Is it 11 miles, huh?
11 miles. I'll see you soon.
Should be 59.7. All right. Wish me luck.
You got this.
29.
You got it. I got you.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate you guys being out.
The next crew stop was an 11-mile run, but it was only about a half-mile drive. So this was the first time I actually had some time to sit and wait. I decided to use this time to finish writing my book, available now at mandyleafphoto.com. But really, waiting at mile 60 was the hardest part of the race for me.
The first challenge after leaving mile 49 was crossing a river and trying to keep my feet dry. As soon as I crossed a creek, the trail went up steeply. Unfortunately, my body just didn't want anything to do with running today. So every time I tried to run, it would just scream and hurt, and I'd have to stop and walk again.
At this point, the runners were coming in maybe every 10 to 15, 20 minutes. You could basically see a headlamp coming in from the distance, and you didn't know who it was going to be until they were just 10 feet in front of you.
I'm at the summit of Snowslide. That was a brutal climb.
He's a little later than expected. It's about 1 a.m. and I hope to see him by now, so it's really hard playing the waiting game, just not knowing what's going on. I'm not really worried, I want to see him succeed, so it's kind of hard.
I just couldn't get my body to move any faster than that.
Now it's like 8 miles downhill to see Mandy again. I'm hurting pretty bad.
And finally, one of those headlights was Kendrick, and I was so happy.
I arrived about 30 minutes before the official cutoff, so I had a decision to make. Do I keep on going and face the almost certain possibility of missing the next cutoff, or do I stop going?
With that in mind, it makes more sense to just leave here. I'm pretty content considering how I feel.
It just made sense for me to call it quits at mile 60.
29.
29. You're going to do nap also?
Yes, sir.
We are back in the car at 2 a.m. at 60 miles, which is pretty freaking amazing.
Just wasn't really my day out there, so I just ended up kind of missing the cutoff. Time to go to bed.
I'll say that of all the times that I've dropped out of a 100-mile race, there's only one time I've ever regretted it, and this was not one of them. There's still a chance that I could have finished it. Just because something's hard and it looks like you can't do it, doesn't mean you shouldn't try.
With all of the pictures and videos that we're constantly posting, it's easy to have the impression that we're super active people running up mountains every single day. But the truth is that we sit in the car a lot. It's just, I don't bore you with those videos.
Now, we often get asked, how do we stay fit on the road? I wish we had an answer for you, but we're still trying to figure out the answer to that question for ourselves. But one thing we do know is you just have to make time for yourself and try your best.
So, here's to trying your best even when you're not at your best. Love and light.